Welcome back to Garden Talk. Let's talk about plant disease. Now, when I first started gardening, I didn't even know plant disease was a thing. I thought you just planted your plants, made sure they got water and sun, and kept your chickens away from them. But plant disease, just like human disease, it is a very, very real thing that plants experience. And if it goes unchecked and untreated, it can kill a plant, and it can spread to the neighboring plants. And your entire tomato harvest could just be gone because you didn't take care of the plant disease if you're a gardener. And the nature of disease, just like sin, is to spread. It is to not remain the evidence that you first saw, like maybe some little spots on a leaf, or leaves curling under, or yellowing leaves, or just dropping leaves. Or powdery mildew, like when there's mold or fungus on the leaves. The nature of disease is to continue to perpetuate itself until it kills the plant, essentially. And so that's where a good gardener is going to recognize the signs of disease and apply the appropriate treatment so that the plant can actually make it. And sometimes the treatment is cutting away of what has been infected. Other times it's maybe applying, a fungicide or something like that to try to save the plant. But ultimately, the plant cannot heal itself. The plant cannot cure itself. If the plant is not treated, the plant will die. And we as branches, we cannot treat ourselves with this sin nature, the sin disease that we have. We need the good gardener's help. And yet sometimes we don't want to let him help us. And the wages of sin is death. That's what the scripture says. And sin in our lives is just like that plant disease. It will spread. It may start as like a little thing in just part of our life, and we compartmentalize it. But the nature of sin is not to remain that little blip. It is to spread. And when we don't call out to the good gardener and say, like, Lord, please help me address the sin in my life. Help me to get it away, get it off of me. Then the sin disease is just going to continue to spread, and it will impact those around us as well. And so you can take a look at these two pepper plants I have here. They were diseased. You think like, oh, lots of rain, that's great for plants. Well, actually, too much rain can really cause problems in a garden as well. And so with all the rain that we experienced this year, a lot of soil-borne diseases were splashed up onto some of my peppers and tomatoes and stuff like that, and it killed a lot of my plants, actually, because I didn't know how to treat it, because I'm not the good perfect gardener who created everything. I'm still learning how to navigate all this. And if you'll notice, like this pepper plant here, both of these, there's a lot of dead parts on them, and it's because the disease just took over. And by the time I got it treated, there was a lot of things that were already dead. And these branches, they used to be beautiful, they used to be fruitful, they used to be productive, and I was able to treat these plants, and they are still alive. And so I'm thankful, and now there's healthy growth, there's new growth. Here's a guajillo growing here, and we have flowers and evidence of other little peppers growing now. But without treatment, the plants, and some of my plants did die because I didn't get to them quickly enough with the right stuff. So in our lives, we do have sin. We do have that sin nature and that disease just in us that wants to spread and wants to destroy us, and wants us to fall off of the vine and disconnect from our source of life. But if we call on the good gardener, he is faithful to help us. He is faithful to treat us with the love and kindness and discipline that we need in order to overcome, that sin. He says that no temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and he will give you something to stand up on, and he will provide a way out of the temptation, and he will provide a way to cure that sin disease and to break those bondage chains. But if we don't call out to the good gardener, if we try to treat ourselves, if we try to take care of ourselves, or even just ignore it and think it'll go away, I mean, eventually that does lead to death. That leads to, just this brittle death when we just snap right off. And I mean, I don't want that. I'm preaching to myself right now, by the way, not y'all. Y'all are fine. But I need to be reminded that I need to call upon the Lord. I need to say, hey, good gardener, I need help. Because a branch, like I said, and I repeat a lot because I think it's important, but a branch cannot cure itself. A branch needs intervention in order to combat the disease and in order to thrive again and flourish. So that concludes our plant disease talk. But there's something else we need to call the gardener for, and that's pruning. Now, pruning often feels like a punishment, and we don't always have to call upon the Lord to prune. He will prune as he desires, but I think it's important for us to adopt that posture of surrender, so that when the Lord does decide it's time to prune something in our lives, a fruitful or unfruitful branch, because he prunes both, when he decides to prune, if we are offering it to him and saying, okay, Lord, yes, you prune wherever you need to prune, and I will trust that you have confidence that it is for my good and your glory, and that if you're pruning something fruitful in my life, that you have full confidence that it's because it's going to allow for even greater growth in the future and greater capacity to bear fruit. And sometimes I think it's tempting for us to hang on to the dead branches in our lives. I mean, like this pepper plant here, like I said, it had disease, and I haven't been a very good gardener lately since I had hurt my back, and so now we have this interesting dichotomy of a plant trying to grow and flourish, but it has dead branches on it. It has dead branches. Doesn't that just look so silly? To have all this life and growth and potential and fruit-bearing capacity, but still be attached and still try to hold on to what is no longer fruitful, what is no longer alive or productive. I mean, it makes for an ugly plant, doesn't it? It makes for an ugly branch growing from the vine that is Jesus. We need to just hold out the parts of us to God and say, Lord, the things in my life that you don't want there anymore, I give them to you, and prune so that I will be more productive and fruitful. Prune the things, even the things that are fruitful or used to be fruitful, because in gardening, pruning holds so much purpose. It's certainly not a punishment for the plant. It is a purposeful and intentional thing. You can prune, like I said, to prevent the spread of disease that seems to be taking hold. You might prune because it's early in the season and a little plant, a little branch is trying to set fruit, but it's not strong enough to really hold that fruit. Or we want the stem and the actual branch part to get thicker and bigger so that it can have more capacity later in the season when it's stronger. Or we might prune at the end of a season where we cut back the growth from that year, because the next year, the next season, the fruit is going to come from the new growth, and so we want to cut back that old growth to make room for the new growth. So pruning in the gardening world, it is a help to the plant. It is a good, important thing, and in our lives as well. If we try to hang on to every single thing all the time, if we try to adopt that fearful posture of like, Lord, don't take anything from me, or all of this is mine, then we've lost sight of God being a good gardener and growing fruit for His glory. If we're trying to hang on to it for our glory or our comfort, then we're not remaining in Jesus. We're remaining in ourselves. We're trying to grow from ourselves. And so I encourage you to, be very, very intentional about surrendering and holding things out. Maybe it used to be fruitful, but it's not anymore. Let it go. Say, Lord, I let this go. He'll do whatever He wants, and He can force you to let things go. But I think sometimes we hang on to the memory of something, or the potential that we used to have in a certain area, and the Lord's like, no, I have new growth for you. I have other parts of you that need to be addressed and can be so fruitful if you stop trying to send nutrients to the dead parts of yourself. So, pruning, like I said, it's not a punishment. It is for the plant's good. It really is for the branch's good, and it's for the gardener's glory. I mean, it's kind of silly if I let my garden be full of all this death or all this, potential that is lost when I have healthy plants. I mean, we remove all of this so that we can have more beauty and more fruit, and the garden can bring glory to the gardener. So don't stand in God's way when you see Him out with the shears. Don't cower in fear. Remember that it is for the benefit of the plant, and it is for His glory. This plant belongs to me. I can do whatever I want to it. But of course I'm not going to intentionally kill it or destroy it. I'm going to do what is good for the plant, because that is what brings me glory as a gardener. All right, the final thing I wanted to share in my garden today, another reason to call on the gardener. We talked about disease, the sin nature in our lives. We talked about pruning and allowing God to cut productive and unproductive parts of us. But the thing I think that bugs me the most are the bugs, the pests. As a gardener, I understand that there are things that just want to eat and destroy all of my hard work. They want to consume it. And as branches, as spiritual beings and growing from the true vine, the worldly influence and things that we surround ourselves with, it can also eat away at us. It can try to rob all the growth that we've been able to accomplish, or just eat away at our peace and our patience and our joy and all of the fruits of the Spirit. So when we notice evidence of this in our lives, we really should call on the gardener. Man, these roosters. It's afternoon right now. It is not like morning. Roosters do not just crow in the morning. They crow all day long. So like I mentioned before, I have not been the best gardener lately. I hurt my back, and so just priorities had to focus elsewhere, and so I had hurt my back, and I didn't come out to the garden for at least a few days, just because I was trying to rest and not overdo it. And before I had hurt my back, I had these beautiful green bean plants. Now you may say, Amy, those are not beautiful green bean plants. And you're right, they're not. Between being out here doing stuff and then being gone for a few days, the caterpillars came and they just decimated. Now there's been some growth since, like I have some actual leaves. Like these guys were like completely stripped bare at one point, but dude, like this was like a bush. This was like a bushy plant. But pests, caterpillars that go unchecked just do so much damage. And it may start really small. I mean, caterpillars, they start from teeny tiny little eggs and they hatch. But the more that they eat, the more they grow and the bigger they get. And then therefore the more they consume. And I mean, the same goes for things in our lives. It may be something really small influencing us. It may be, you know, the opinion of a friend who, you know, maybe is well-meaning, maybe is not well-meaning, but something that that they say that starts to create like an anxiety in us. And then, you know, a little bit more and a little bit more, and pretty soon that anxiety just grows and grows and grows until it's a huge caterpillar just chomping away, chomp, chomp, chomp. And when we notice evidence, I mentioned that before, when I go out in the garden, what I'm looking for, when I'm looking over my plants, I'm looking for evidence of pests. And it can be things like, you know, half-eaten leaves, or even just bare branches. Hopefully I catch it before it's a bare branch. Hopefully I just see the nibbles. But I also see caterpillar poop. You know, I recognize that on leaves, and so if I see that, then I'm like, gotta find that caterpillar, because I see evidence that it has been here. Or even like silky residue. Some caterpillars, they have like a silky residue. And then other caterpillars, they even, I don't see it right here right now, I'll show you in a minute. Some caterpillars actually take the leaf and hide in it. So they take the stickiness, whatever that they make, silk, yeah, it's probably silk, and they fold a leaf over on themselves and kind of hide in the plant itself. And, you know, when I was thinking about this, I was like, you know what? Sometimes we allow things, sometimes we shelter the things that are eating us. We shelter things that are damaging us because we know they're there, and we allow them to remain. We don't hold them out to the garden. We don't say, hey, good gardener, please, like, this stuff is eating away at me. Like, I need your help. Please help remove this pest. Give me something to withstand this influence around me. But sometimes, for whatever reason, we start to idolize the things in our lives that are causing us this lack of growth. I mean, it could be, you know, a TV show that crosses some moral boundaries that we're not really comfortable with, but we keep watching it anyway, and then pretty soon we start getting more comfortable with it, and, you know, it starts to, you know, maybe eat away at our gratitude, or eat away at our peace, or something like that. And if we continue to allow that influence to eat away at us, I mean, what are we doing to ourselves? We are sheltering the enemy, essentially. And you know, it's crazy to think when we put it in those terms, and yet I know I've been guilty of that. There's things that's like, oh, it's, you know, it's just this, it's okay. But no, like, the ungodly influences and things that distract us from God, or things that maybe cause us to like to be ungrateful, or to you know, be fearful, or something like that. Like, why should we shelter them? Why should we allow them to keep eating away at us until we become unfruitful? So like these green bean plants, I don't know if you can see. So like, here's a little tiny green bean that was trying to grow, but now, because the plant has no leaves down here or up here, this green bean, I mean, the fruit, the green bean is the fruit here. It's not gonna it's not going to grow. It's not going to do anything positive anymore because the plant has no energy for it. The leaves, you know, do photosynthesis and catch the light and go through that process, and the plant doesn't have leaves. So, you know, obviously we're not plants, but the metaphor and the symbolism just is so powerful to me, and it is convicting to think, okay, what caterpillars are in my life? Like, what am I allowing to influence me in a way that I shouldn't? What am I sheltering when I really should be calling out to God? Because so when we find caterpillars, and the kids know, we go caterpillar hunting, especially when we start seeing evidence that there are pests in the garden. We go caterpillar hunting, and then we go feed the caterpillars to the chickens. So, you know, calling on God and saying, Lord, this influence, it is distracting me from my purpose of growing fruit and glorifying you. It is just draining me of energy because it's consuming my leaves. Or, you know, forgive me, Lord, for sheltering this thing that I should not be sheltering in my life. He is a good gardener, way better than me, way better than me. And he is faithful to help us when we call upon him. And here's the thing. Here is something that I just thought was so profound when the Lord showed it to me. So the reason the caterpillars even, you know, exist, if you will, is the moths. Sometimes butterflies too. Butterflies and moths. They lay eggs, and those eggs hatch into caterpillars, and that is what eats the plants. Now, a plant could be totally surrounded by butterflies and moths, and they could be flying around everywhere, and nothing's eating the plant, because it's not the moth, it's not the actual influence that eats away at us. It's what we allow to be deposited in our hearts. It's what we allow to influence us. That is the problem. So we can be in the world, we can be surrounded by, you know, negativity and people that are driving us crazy, and that's not the caterpillar. The caterpillar comes from what we allow to be deposited in our hearts, what we allow to influence us. And so I think that is actually very encouraging, because we are in the world. We're not in a perfect environment. I mean, I live in a crazy loud house full of imperfect people, and I'm one of them. And that's okay. And I can still have, you know, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control in the midst of all of this, you know, influence that I experience. I just have to be mindful of what I allow to be deposited on me, what eggs I allow to hatch. You know, we talk about seeds and stuff in gardening. I mean, essentially that's the moth and the butterfly seeds that we allow to hatch and then eat away at us. So, but God's a good gardener. And when we call upon him to help us to deal with these pests, he will.